The Yellow Wallpaper is a psychological horror that explores a woman's descent into madness. The narrator, an unnamed woman, moves into a large, isolated mansion with her husband, John, for the summer. She is suffering from postpartum depression, which John, a physician, dismisses as temporary nervous depression. His prescribed treatment is complete rest, forbidding her from writing or engaging in any creative activity. John rents a room in the attic for them, a large, airy nursery with barred windows and peeling yellow wallpaper. The narrator immediately dislikes the wallpaper, finding its chaotic pattern and sickly yellow color unsettling. However, she has little choice but to remain in the room as her husband insists that she must rest and avoid any stimulating activities. As the days pass, the narrator's condition worsens due to her isolation. She secretly keeps a journal, writing about her growing obsession with the wallpaper. She begins to see strange shapes and movements in the pattern, becoming convinced that there is a figure trapped behind it, a woman, perhaps, trying to escape. John dismisses her concerns and continues to restrict her, confining her to the room and preventing her from seeing others. The narrator's mental state deteriorates as she spends hours staring at the wallpaper, believing the trapped woman is creeping behind the design, desperately trying to break free. Her obsession reaches a breaking point. She believes that she must free the woman behind the wallpaper and starts tearing at it. In her delusional state, she imagines she is liberating the woman, or perhaps becoming her. She locks herself in the room, tearing the wallpaper with frantic energy. When John finally opens the door, he is horrified by the scene. His wife is crawling around the room, circling it like the woman she believes was trapped behind the wallpaper. John faints in shock, but the narrator, now completely unhinged, continues her creeping, stepping over his unconscious body. The story ends with the narrator declaring that she has finally freed herself from the wallpaper and the constraints of her life, leaving readers with a haunting image of a woman's mind unraveling under the weight of oppressive treatment and isolation. The Yellow Wallpaper is a psychological horror story that depicts the mental decline of an unnamed woman who is confined to an attic room by her well-meaning but oppressive husband, John. The story begins with the narrator and John moving into a large, secluded mansion for the summer. She has just given birth and is suffering from what her husband calls temporary nervous depression, or what we would now recognize as postpartum depression. John, who is a physician, prescribes the Rest Cure, a popular treatment at the time that involves complete isolation, rest, and avoidance of any creative or intellectual activities. Despite her love for writing, the narrator is forbidden from engaging in any mental stimulation, including her writing. However, she secretly keeps a journal, documenting her thoughts and feelings about her condition and surroundings. They stay in a large room in the attic that was once a nursery. The room has barred windows, heavy furniture, and, most disturbingly, peeling yellow wallpaper. From the moment they arrive, the narrator expresses a deep aversion to the wallpaper, describing its sickly yellow color and chaotic, confusing pattern. As the days drag on, the narrator's isolation takes a toll on her mental health. She has nothing to do but rest in the room, and her thoughts are increasingly consumed by the wallpaper. She begins to see strange shapes and patterns in it, which she initially dismisses as her imagination. However, her obsession with the wallpaper grows, and she becomes convinced that there is something more sinister hidden in the design. The more she stares at the wallpaper, the more she believes that there is a figure behind it, a woman, or perhaps many women, trapped beneath the surface. The narrator begins to sympathize with this imagined figure, believing that the woman behind the wallpaper is trying to escape. Her journal entries become more erratic as she describes the figure creeping and crawling behind the wallpaper's pattern, struggling for freedom. John continues to dismiss her concerns, insisting that she simply needs more rest. He refuses to let her leave the room or engage with others, believing that too much excitement will worsen her condition. As a result, the narrator becomes even more isolated, and her mental state deteriorates rapidly. She spends hours studying the wallpaper, her mind unraveling as she becomes obsessed with freeing the trapped woman. Eventually, the narrator becomes convinced that she, too, is part of the wallpaper. She believes that she must help the woman inside the wallpaper escape by tearing it down. In a frenzied state, she locks herself in the room and begins tearing at the wallpaper, peeling it away with desperate determination. When John finally unlocks the door and enters the room, he is horrified by what he sees. His wife is crawling around the room, circling it repeatedly, claiming that she has finally freed the woman in the wallpaper, or has become her. John faints from shock, and the narrator, now fully delusional, continues creeping around the room, stepping over his unconscious body. In the chilling final line, the narrator declares, "I've got out at last, in spite of you and Jane. And I've pulled off most of the paper, so you can't put me back." The story ends with a haunting image of the narrator's complete mental breakdown, symbolizing the destructive effects of isolation, control, and repression on a person's mind.